Hi guys, welcome to Social Anxiety Inside Out. This is Hangout number 33. And when I say that out loud, I can't believe I've done that many, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But anyway, if you haven't been on one of these Hangouts before, I'll just explain a little bit about the kind of things we talk about. So basically, I carried the label of social anxiety disorder and shyness around for most of my life. At the age of 19, I came across the term social anxiety disorder, and all the symptoms matched the way I was experiencing life. So I went to get help for that specific issue, and I went on a journey of doing different things and trying to overcome it, but something didn't seem quite right. It was like I was always chasing my tail. I'd get to a certain point and then wake up feeling rubbish and then beat myself up about it. So what we're talking about here is something a little bit different, really. We're talking about the source of our experience and how, a way to explain how we create our experience in life. And, it's based on the work called the Three Principles or Health Realization. It has many different names, but we're relating it to different different issues around social anxiety, self-esteem, and having an understanding of this will help anyone on a general level. So in this particular session, we're talking about public speaking fear specifically, and I've really struggled with that in the past, to the point where I've run out of my college classroom because I just couldn't handle the nerves, and the pressure of being in front of people was just too much. It was absolutely terrifying, and because I had the physical symptoms as well, it just felt like this is a real big problem, and I just felt so ashamed. So the special guest this week is Donna Churchman. Donna, I came across Donna's video. I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was over a couple of months, and she's been training with Jamie Smart, and I was just so inspired by your video, Donna, just hearing, over that period of time, which we'll talk about in a bit, that you've, even thinking about standing up in front of people or just, being in that environment was uncomfortable, and now you see it so differently, and I just felt compelled to speak to you about that. So thank you so much for coming on. It's a real pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
So I felt like asking you, did you want to talk a bit about, have you had this kind of problem all of your life, or is it more recent?
No, it's been all of my life, really. I went to art college. I was a graphic designer for many years and had a business in London. And I first sort of came across this feeling of anxiety and stress about speaking in front of everyone was at art college, because we'd have to present our designs in front of everyone. And I was a very confident designer, and I was very capable, but it brought up so much anxiety at the thought of actually presenting in front of my friends, that I'd try and do everything to avoid it, like I'd run out of time, or, I just really didn't want to do it. So I went from art college. I got a job at the BBC. That was my first design job. And I was very confident going to interviews and speaking to people one-to-one. And I didn't really consider I had a sort of anxiety about public speaking at that time. And then I had to do a presentation. I created this sort of identity, and I had to present it. And usually the people that I presented are like 2 or 3 people at the most. And this person I was presenting it to, I knew really well. I'd worked with them for quite a long time, had a good relationship with them. And he invited all his team into this meeting, and I didn't know that there was going to be, more than like up to him and his assistant maybe. And I went into this room, and it was, in my eyes, full of people. There was about 7 people there. But it was, it really, it just stopped me in my tracks. I couldn't speak. He could see something was wrong because he's used to me just communicating and chatting and talking about what I was doing. And I couldn't speak. I was frozen. And so he made a joke and broke the ice, and I was all right after that. And that's when I sort of experienced that I had this anxiety or this adrenaline or this sort of my thoughts just freezing, and I couldn't speak at that moment. And so I didn't really, experience it very much in my career, because I did present to small amounts of people. But then I started a design company up with my business partner, and the same thing. Usually it's a few people. I remember we were going for a pitch, and again, someone that I knew quite well as a client, and he'd invited some other people. And we walked in, and it was a proper boardroom scene with about 14 people in the room. And we had boards at the time, and I was, again, frozen. I wanted to hide behind these boards, and I literally did hide behind the boards. I'd be hiding like this and presenting them to my business partner, and he had his own anxieties about public speaking, but he managed to sort of confidently express what we were doing. But it was that horrible feeling inside of like a spotlight, and everyone's looking at me and listening. And I don't think I uttered a word. I literally was like the assistant, not the designer. And we won the job, which was fantastic. But then I realized it was sort of like I felt like it was a real limitation in my business, and I wasn't really feeling so uncomfortable yet so confident in what I was doing, because we were working for big corporations and we were doing really well in our business. And so I went on a public speaking course, and for about 6 weeks, and a lovely group of people, and I got to know them really well, and it was all building up to doing this speech at the end. And we were chatting beforehand. I hadn't really ever stood in front of a room before. And that's when I started to have so much adrenaline and couldn't remember what I was going to say. And I went up to the front for my turn, and I remember looking at everybody's faces. And these people that I'd been really animated with and speaking to just like 5 minutes before just looked so serious and stern, like they didn't like me, and it really put me off. And I just, I sort of mumbled my way through it. But what was going on in my body was the adrenaline to the point of feeling like I was going to faint. It was that strong. And so this is why I sort of labelled myself then and believed that I can't public speak. It's never going to happen for me. Some people are good at it, some people can do it, and I'm just one of those people that can't. So through the rest of my sort of business, I made sure that that wasn't something that I did. And my business partner got better over the years as well. We had our company for 14 years, and I'd sort of avoid it really.
Well, I can totally relate to everything you said, especially at work as well. I haven't worked for anyone since 2006 because I've set up on my own, but I just remember being in the board meetings and the the marketing manager from Nissan came in with his assistants, and I had to present, the weekly updates to them, and I just felt like a child there. I just felt so lost, and I just tried to say as little as I could, and it's really painful, isn't it? It sometimes feels like the end of the world, not to sound over dramatic, but you're just so full of adrenaline and fear, and it feels like a real threat, doesn't it? It feels, it feels really painful. And the same as what you said about thinking that you'll never be able to speak publicly. I was exactly the same. Just really believe that to be true, and not see past that. It's quite extraordinary how we create these or have these beliefs in our mind that we believe to be so true that they're solid. And both you and I are a proof of that's totally not true, because I never imagined that I'd be running my own groups and speaking to people just like it doesn't feel like anything. It just feels like the most natural thing in the world. And not to say that I don't get nervous now and again, get insecure, but I'm just so grateful that I'm able to do that, and I'm sure you feel the same. It must feel great. So how did you come across Jamie Smart's training course?
Well, it's quite interesting how it happened. I suppose I was looking for, still seeking and searching and trying to find something, because I spent 25 years or so doing that, trying to understand my own human experience. And so there was a weekend that I was thinking of going on from a personal development trainer, and I got his book, and I was going to send the link to a friend about this person. And so I went onto Amazon to get the link, and then I saw, there's tiny little books at the bottom, people who read this also read these other books. And then I saw this tiny little picture of clarity, excuse me, and I instantly clicked on it and wanted it straight away. I didn't really read all about it or what it was about. I just knew that I needed to read this book, and it was such a strong impulse in me that I ordered the book straight away, and then I couldn't wait for it to be delivered. So I got my husband to get the audio, and I started listening to it that night. It was like, and the other person just disappeared. And then, so I listened to it, and I listened to it twice, and it was like I was hearing something. I was starting to see something, tiny little bits. I didn't know what it was quite I was seeing or hearing, but things started shifting in my sort of understanding. I suppose I know now I've sort of done Jamie's course, the first year. I was getting it at that intellectual level. It had, in little bits of me, it was touching deeper. But I was thinking about it a lot, trying to understand what this book was saying about thinking and feeling. So once I'd listened to it twice, I just knew I needed to be immersed in it. And so I looked on the website to see if there was a course or I thought maybe a workshop, but it was so strong. There was it wasn't like I was thinking about doing these things. It was like a real massive impulse to do it. And I knew that when I saw the course, I knew that I I wasn't even wanted to. I knew that I had to be on it. It was like that. And at the time, I didn't have the money for it. And I put all the dates in the calendar, and I just didn't know how I was going to do it. And I've got a little girl and my husband, and time-wise, and it all happened. So, the money, showed up, as they say, and my husband's been supporting me with the time. And that's how I came across it, really. It was really not, I didn't need any convincing. I didn't need anything other than, just getting in contact with whatever the book was saying, whatever Jamie was saying. There was another part of me that was hearing it, that was sort of showing the direction to go in. And I thankfully, over the years, I have really listened to that when I have those feelings without thinking, for the right direction. And luckily, I listened to it. So that's how I came across Jamie's work.
Brilliant. It sounds like you're kind of following your, some people call it intuition or wisdom. It felt right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've experienced that more and more recently. Like, sometimes you might try and think your way out of it intellectually, but yeah, there's been so many occurrences over the past 14 months where I just get this feeling to do something, contact someone or have an idea, and feel compelled to put it into action. It feels so much more effortless than trying to force something. That's the only way I can explain it. I've kind of done that before in the past, but not, I've been following my gut feeling a lot of the time, but before this understanding, I'd mentally beat myself up for not being more organised and more considered in the way I approach things. But when I look back on that, it makes sense to where I am now. It always does when you look back. But I think, I don't know, I just wanted to ask you a bit more about, I know you said it was over 10 months, but how quickly were you seeing changes for yourself when you were going from being terrified to speak in front of the group, to be able to do it more easily? Was it actually over 10 months, or was there a particular turning point where you really kind of caught yourself speaking and like rubbing your eyes in disbelief internally, just like, I'm actually doing this, and this is not so bad?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a few key moments through the 10 months. And the very first one was the second day of Jamie's course. And I know this is, in the video that you've seen. And the interesting thing is that the day before, I connected with this absolutely lovely lady, Deborah, and the first couple of hours. And we were talking about what, why we were here, what we'd like to get out of the course. I think Jamie had asked a question that was sort of something on that line. So we were discussing it. And I said, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to get out of here, because I just know I need to be on this course. This is where I'm supposed to be. But if there was anything that I'd like to overcome, it would be public speaking. And so I think that was on the Saturday morning. So then the Saturday there was a lot of listening and silence and like deeply listening to what Jamie was saying. A lot of space. And there was also a lot of opportunity to contribute. It was very much a course that, there's a lot of sort of interaction with Jamie and the group. And I really wanted to contribute, and I found that sort of the same old pattern of things would happen. So I'd get a question in my head or a thought or an observation from things that were being said, and then I'd get sweaty hands and a really sort of a rush of adrenaline and my heart pounding, and then my mind fuzzing over with all this adrenaline, and then I felt like sitting on my hands so that I didn't, my body didn't accidentally put my hand up. And that went on all through the Saturday. And then I realised, I've still got this, whatever this thing, this public speaking thing. I mean, there was about 36 people, lovely people, and it was a very comfortable environment. But I just couldn't do it. So the next morning, it was Sunday morning, and it was before tea break. Jamie was talking, and I couldn't remember what he was saying, but it set off something within me. I'd say it's like describe it like an explosion, because there were such strong feelings and reactions in my body. I felt like I started to shake. I was sweating. I felt really emotional. I didn't really know what was going on. And we had the break coming up, so I was like, went down to the toilets and just trying to compose myself, just trying to figure out what was going on inside me. And I got to I went to find Jamie to have a talk to him, and say what's happening to me. I felt completely sort of out of control, and I don't know what had triggered it. I don't know what had happened. So we sat out in the garden, and that's when I was talking to him about what I was experiencing, and he said, it sounds like you're dropping, a whole load of habitual, out-of-date thinking, and your level of consciousness, your awareness of this is changing. I didn't really understand that at the time because I was so in the experience. And then he asked me, would I like to share this with the group after tea break? And then I said, well, I've got this thing about public speaking. And I talked to him about how I found it really difficult to put my hand up, even though I really wanted to, really wanted to be part of it and contribute. And he said to me, it's not the public speaking, it's your thinking about the public speaking. And I know that was impacting me really deeply. I didn't really understand it. Again, the other part of me was hearing it. And so I went, oh, okay. And then we went back in, and other people were, he asked them, if anyone would like to share anything, and people were speaking, and I was sitting there, and I didn't put my hand up, but he offered me the space, and I stood up, and I was able to describe to people what I was experiencing. And I was a little, I still had that experience. I was a little bit nervous, but the day before I wouldn't have been able to almost speak, to even explain what was happening to myself. And so then that's when I sort of realized something was changing. I didn't realize what had changed. And then later on in the afternoon, we did an exercise in a group, and then we had to go and stand up in front as a group. And my legs were shaking, and I had to say a couple of words. And it was I still felt nervous, but I was able to do it. It was still uncomfortable, but it wasn't like before. So it was really something changing in that time, but I didn't know what. So then 6 weeks later, we came back to the course, and that's when I realized things had changed, because I started putting my hand up and contributing. And it was like, well, I didn't even think about it. You know, I wasn't even aware of it until probably the third time I put my hand up. And, you know, then I became an observer of what was going on, because it was almost like experiencing somebody else. It wasn't like experiencing what I was used to. And then Mamoon, who was training us at the time, sort of coaching training, he asked a very specific question. And that's when my adrenaline started and my hands started sweating. But what was amazing was I didn't let the rest of the thoughts come in. So like, oh, here we go again, or, oh, you know, it hasn't gone, or that public speaking thing's still there. There was nothing going on. I was really observing, just knowing that there's some thinking going on here that I'm not aware of. And that's causing these reactions. And just knowing that meant that I could just sit with it. I didn't sort of identify with it. And then because of that, somehow the thought that I was running, I don't know, you know, behind the scenes in my subconscious, showed itself. And it was about, you know, you can only, you know, speak up if you have the right answer. Because this was a very specific question he was asking. And so it wasn't just sharing about your experience, this was sharing about, you know, this was giving an answer. And so that was amazing. I was just like, wow, you know, that's what thought I believed to be true. That was hanging around somewhere in my subconscious. And so the amazing thing was, you know, the weekend carried on, and I spoke more and more. I spoke when, you know, Jamie's part of the weekend, and then it was about, I think the next week, I was just walking into town and just, you know, really not thinking very much at all, just quite peaceful in my mind. And then I saw where that thought came from, where it originated. And it was back in my geography classroom when I was 16. And we had, you know, a teacher that wasn't particularly kind or supportive to us, and would, you know, I think, like to humiliate us and make us stand on chairs and really sort of reprimand us if we didn't come up with the right answer. So it made a very, very stressful experience. And so stressful being in that class, I chose to do a completely different subject that I wasn't going to, just to avoid that anxiety. So that's really when I saw that something changed. And from that point on, it's just been sort of the experience of it, the experience of what it's like not to be nervous in front of people. And so Jamie asked me if I'd speak in front of the meetup. And, you know, it's about 50 people, excuse me. And that experience was very different, because I knew I was going to be speaking in front of people, and I had a good week or so to know about it. And I only had a tiny little bit of nerves for a few moments before, and then when I was speaking, it felt really, really natural. And that was the first real experience of speaking in front of people that I didn't know. It wasn't my group, it wasn't Jamie's course. And even being able to just look around the room, not just focus on one person. And it just felt very, very natural. And then it's continued. You know, a few weeks ago, Jamie had a conference. There was 100 people there. and I spoke twice there, and it felt, the feeling that I have now is I don't have the anxiety or thinking beforehand, so I'm very calm. And when I'm speaking, it's whatever's going on right then. And then there's no thinking afterwards. Did I say something stupid, or did I come across well, or there's none of that afterwards. So there's just a moment to moment to moment experience. And so that's been the journey. It's quite amazing that, and then doing this, anything public, it doesn't have the fear that it used to. I think it's a lot of the thoughts I used to have of self-criticism, and especially about saying something stupid or being embarrassing, and I think that was, I'm very lucky to, I suppose, see where it came from. But it doesn't matter where it came from anyway. It's just how it showed itself, where it started. I didn't need to know it, but it's quite an interesting to look at the journey now and see where I believe that to be true. About saying things in front of people, it's going to make you feel humiliated or embarrassed, or going to be criticised. So yeah, it's been different experiences throughout the 10 months.
That's so wonderful to hear. And 100 people as well. It's funny, because I felt like naming this talk, speak to 100 people like you're speaking to one. And for myself, I always thought that a bigger group, the bigger the group, the more scary. That's just a normal kind of thing that people associate with public speaking, isn't it? That there's more at stake and there's more judgment because there's more people.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a bit about your thoughts on that. But before I do, actually, just wanted to invite people to ask questions. We haven't had any through yet, but if anyone wants to ask Donna or myself questions, please just post below the video. There's a contact form. 100 people. You've beat me in size, so I'm going to have to step up my game a bit. Just in your own words, how do you see it now in regards to the size of the group you're speaking to? Because, like you said, you've spoke to 100, and
it's fascinating, because this journey is, you don't know what it's going to be like until you experience it. So I don't know what speaking to 100 people would be like. And the way that it sort of appears to me now, the number doesn't matter. However many people, it could be 100, 200, 1,000. I've got no thinking about it, because the insecurities and criticisms and self-judgments in the past, my own, would be so much worse than anybody else could say to me, and they're not there anymore. So there was to show an example of, I suppose, if I was going back to the way that I used to think about things, what would be the worst thing that could happen? What would be the most embarrassing, worst thing that can happen? And I sort of had an experience of that at this conference, and we were doing, this conference was full of sort of coaches and trainers, and some people that knew Jamie's understanding, or this understanding, and other people that were new to it. And then there was about 15 of us from the course. And it was the week before we were certified as clarity practitioners. And so Jamie had put all our pictures up on the wall with our quotes, and he was live streaming to quite a few countries. And so there were all these people there, and we, as the practitioners that were there, we took these little pods, these little groups of people to sort of talk with them and do sort of practice with them. So there was this guy that I was chatting to, and we did one of the practices together. So it was like an intake session, and he'd been doing sort of a different type of coaching, and so we did this intake session, and I went first as the sort of coach, and so I was really connected to him and deeply listening to him and listening to what was going on in his thinking. And he opened up very quickly, and we were, and it seemed very clear to me what was going on. I was pointing him back, to in that direction, back to him, inside him, and I felt very, very deeply connected to him. So we did this session, and he was starting to see things. And it was only like 15 minutes, and there was obviously lots of noise, and so we did this practice, and then we had a little break, and he came up to me after the break and said, I really, when you were listening to me, when you were deeply listening to me, you were in my world, and it was great. And I'd spoken to him about a few things about what I'd learned on the course, and he'd said, but when you went into your world, I completely shut down. I wasn't interested. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was really amazing because there was nothing going on. I was like, oh, thank you for that feedback. And then Jamie said, oh, okay, everyone come back together, and as anyone would like to, have give some feedback on that. And he immediately put his hand up. And started to speak, and he said the same thing. So he said, when Donna was in my world and listening to me, I'm really connected. It was really good. But when she spoke about herself, I didn't care. It was really quite blunt. And what was happening to me was amazing, because there he was saying this in front of all my practitioner friends that I've known for 10 months now and dearly connected to, in front of Jamie, in front of all these, live streaming people, all these other people in this event. And I'm supposed to be one of those people that are coming out at the end of the course, so that I can do this. And what was amazing in me, there was just no thought going on, and no anxiety or no sort of self-defeating thinking. There was nothing. And I was sitting in that space inside my head, almost waiting for it. It's like, what could be more awkward or embarrassing in the past? This is what, to do this to happen to me. But there was none of that going on. I was just listening to him, and so Jamie asked, well, how did you feel about it, Donna? And I said, well, I felt really connected. He said, oh, so it's maybe a calibration thing. So, and then the guy came down and sat down next to me again, and he said, something I forgot to say was, that I did see something. I know what to do. And I said to him, do you know, I've just had an amazing experience. And then I said to him what had happened to me, how I would have felt if you'd said that in front of all these people in the past. It would have, I would have been crushed. I would have been running off to the toilet. I would have, all those feelings, and or felt embarrassed, or I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. But it didn't happen. And so I told him, it's like, and I really appreciate your feedback. I know that's really going to help me be able to help people more. And he was really taken aback by my response to it. And he said, he was a bit taken aback. He said, wow, that's pretty amazing that, you feel that. That's really great. And what was amazing after that was that we went into a deeper level of connection. And he asked if we could do some more coaching afterwards at the end of the day. So that evening I went back, and there was still no thinking about it. And a couple of my friends had come up and said, oh, that was, we felt for you and this. And I was like, there was nothing going on. And then the next day I came into the conference and I realized what was missing was the thought that I'm not good enough and all the additional thinking that goes on top of that. That's what was missing. That's what wasn't there anymore. And then Jamie, somebody mentioned, what if a client has a complaint about something? And he said in the simplest terms, that's what happened to Donna. Somebody was complaining about, what happened. And he said, the best thing that I've got going for me is to keep clear, keep in that space of clarity. And so I stood up and I told everyone what happened. I shared it with everybody. And because I realized it wasn't personal. It really wasn't personal. And in the past, obviously, I would have taken it to be very personal. That's something about me, something about the way that I do it, or what I can do, or, the way that I am as a person, or my ability. But I really didn't see it like that. I just saw it as this person's experience and my experience. And because we shared them, we went into a deeper level of connection. So it was another experience of, well, even if this happens in front of 100 people, I'm okay. It doesn't change anything that's going on inside me. And it sort of helped me with realizing how I've been holding myself back by, I suppose, not wanting an experience like that. Even though I didn't know that, I suppose since I was 16, I didn't want an experience like that because that would be the worst case scenario. But it just happened, and everything good came out of it. So yeah.
That's so awesome. That really struck me when you said that, because again, with the numbers thing, in the past you would have felt criticized by that one guy, by anyone who either disagrees with you or says something, and take it personally. And then you had your own insight about, oh well, that would be okay even in a larger group. And that's not, someone could have told you that, but you've seen it for yourself, and that's for me is, I don't know, a very powerful thing when you have a realization yourself. It's worlds apart from knowing it intellectually, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it really is, because even when we were suffering with this anxiety around public speaking, we know it's irrational. We know it. We shouldn't be scared of it, but the feeling rules. And when we know how the system works and we have insight into that, that's a powerful thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mm.
It made me realize a lot clearer, a lot deeper how I thought about myself, or I thought who I was. I'd created this very, very certain thought created version of myself. And through this journey, the public speaking experience and journey and the course, it's made me really see that that is not true. It can't be true. What I'm believing about, what I did believe about myself, cannot possibly be true, because if it was true, I wouldn't be able to stand up in front of these people. I wouldn't be able to stay calm. So it made me realize all these thoughts about who I think I am. I've got no idea who I am. I realize that more and more and more. I don't know who I am. And I suppose I'm surprising myself because I'm being an observer of what's possible, because I can stand up in front of people and I can speak to people, and I didn't even know that was possible because I created such a certain version of myself. And seeing that has not only helped me with public speaking, but so many things.
Mm.
Because if those thoughts were true, then this stuff, speaking to you, wouldn't be happening. I'd still be living in them, living in those feelings, and definitely avoiding doing anything like this.
Mm. And I think that, you know, when we when we believe something to be true for so many years as well, it feels even more real until we realise it's not. Because, like you said, over the past, is it 10 months from now? Is it, or?
Yeah, I think it's 10 months. Yeah, it was
from that recently. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, and it becomes more real, doesn't it? After, you know, me being the shy person for so long, it kind of, you're building up all these memories and all this evidence that it must be true because you remember it and you bring all those to life, and it's just like this whole habitual thought structure of who you think you are, and I felt like adding that, you know, I wanted to say it's not a scary thing when you start seeing that it's not real. For me, it's liberating, because all the things that you thought were not possible or held you back become less solid, and it's not to say that I see it all the time. I'm sure you'll agree. You won't be able to see certain things, but when you're looking in this direction, it kind of unfolds in such a nice way that, for me, it kind of makes it a bit more fun, because I don't know, if you saw everything that was stopping you at once, I don't know, I'm just making this up anyway. It might be amazing if you saw that. But for me, it's kind of fun knowing that if you're stuck on a particular thing or a problem, that there's always room for fresh thinking to change your view of that. That really feels fantastic to me, knowing that.
Yeah.
And no matter how stuck in your thinking you are, or you're just feeling rubbish, I know that that's going to pass as well. It's really liberating, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. You just knowing that, you know, all those, you know, the beliefs about yourself, you know, that you think you are, those, you know, habitual things, you know that they're not real. Once you start to feel that and start to know it deeper, then they still show up and you still see them. Well, I still see them and I still feel them. but they're just come in and out. They become more neutral. I can still hear them, but they become more distant, and they don't sort of trigger off feelings. They can still hang around. I think that because of that, as you say, you've got this space then for a new thought, a new direction. I'm finding that more myself, that if I go down a certain route, I start to feel that it's not the right direction. It's like, okay, then I just know that the right direction will show itself as well. I don't have to follow that route. I can hang around for that new thought or that new direction. Whereas in the past, that wasn't even sort of accessible to me. It was a very much working all out, heavy thinking process. Yeah, and it's like these opportunities open up, and it can happen so quickly. I mean, 30 years for me of a belief that, was my identity. And then it got shaken out on sort of one moment, and has been, clearing out ever since, really. What was interesting, when Jamie was speaking that very first weekend, I didn't hear what he was saying before it triggered that change, that dropping inside me, that sort of explosion. And the amazing thing was, at the conference, so this whole journey, this 10 months later, I heard the words. I recognized what it was that triggered it all off. And I still can't remember them, absolutely as he says it, because obviously a deeper part of me heard it 10 months before, that changed all this internal thinking, this dialogue. But 10 months later, and the conference, and this, sort of what could have been in the past awkward situation, he was talking about people being the fullest expression of who they really are. And that's what had changed everything for me in that 10 months before, because it must have been some part of me really heard that and knew it was the truth. And that all this thinking about who I thought I was completely untruth. So it's a lovely, lovely journey. They're amazing.
Wow, and who knows where it's going to take you next?
Wembley. You and me will be there, Steve.
Okay. I feel quite relaxed about it. That's weird, actually, when you said that.
The
O2. Yeah, so we've got a question in, actually. So this person asks, do you prepare what you're going to say, or do you just flow?
I don't prepare what I'm going to say. I find that there's no fear about not knowing what you're going to say. And that's very, very sort of the opposite of how I would have thought about it in the past. I would have thought, if I was going to speak publicly, even for 10 minutes, I'd somehow have to train myself and figure out what I was going to say and how I was going to say it and structure it. That's how I would have approached it if I had to do something like that. But I would have avoided doing it in the first place. But now it's really just being in the moment, because I don't know what Steve's going to ask, and I don't know what we're going to share. So it just happens and unfolding. It sounds a little bit, I don't know. It's like easy, but it's not about being easy. It's just being what's happening right now, without all the thoughts of preparing or what I'm going to say. I think if I prepared and I had thoughts in my head about what I was intending to say, firstly, I wouldn't feel very authentic, because it wouldn't be speaking from, sort of a deeper place. And I'm bound to forget. I'm going to be in my head. I'm not really going to be connected to the person I'm speaking to or the audience. And that's how I look at it now. It's very, very different. And what I'm finding, actually, I don't remember what I said. I really don't remember what I said. And after I've, spoken, I don't remember it, because it was in that moment. And then the next moment's gone on. Very different experience. And it's actually, I suppose it is much easier than people think to just free flow. Yeah. How do you feel about that, Steve?
Yeah, it is very different now. I just wanted to share an example. Even before coming across this understanding, I just being at one of my groups and doing an exercise, and we do impromptu questions. So you pick a question, you might not know what it is, and this question was, how do you make a pizza? And in the past I could be like, oh my god, that's so difficult, and then just get really tight and think, oh, I have no idea how to answer that, oh my god. But this time, because I had a clear mind, I was just letting what I knew about making a pizza come to me, and I was just surprising myself every moment, going through all the, how to roll the dough and how to put the toppings on and how long to bake it and what temperature to put it in the oven. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And yeah, when we've got a clear mind, and our brain stores so much information that we can more or less recall everything that we know, and even even deeper than that. But I don't know, I'm just thinking about, people might be watching this and thinking, I've got to do these presentations at work and remember figures and stuff like that. But I guess what I'd say to that is, I guess it's okay to rehearse those, but trust yourself that that you're going to come up with them, rather than trying to hold them in your head. And it's a very different way of doing it, but it's, once you get a sense of that, it feels a lot safer than actually trying to remember it, because it's all kind of stiff, and it flows a lot more authentically, like you said.
Yeah, I've thought about presentations and how to convey information, like you say, remembering facts or figures that need to be discussed in that presentation, and how I'm seeing it now, investigating that is like you say, there's certain bits of information you can rehearse or remember, or just sort of familiarize yourself with, really. And you've got that already. You sort of, if you've done that, then it's in there. And the more relaxed you are, you're going to remember that information. It's like going back to my experiences of having exams, and and I never considered that I had a very sharp, like, memory, long-term memory. for data or information. And yet, when I was comfortable and relaxed, I did really well. And I did really well in history, where there was a lot of details and facts to remember. It's because I wasn't anxious about that exam. I felt comfortable with the subject and I enjoyed it. And so when I went to my exam, I could remember all these things. Yeah, if I went to my science exam, that I found really difficult and complicated. I couldn't remember the most basic things because I was stressed and I had a lot of thinking and a lot of anxiety about it. So I'm sure that comes down to the same thing when you're doing presentations. You've got information. As long as you've seen that information a little bit, then you've got it in there, and you're going to, like you say, you'll be able to recall it. It's already there.
Mm. Was there anything else you wanted to end with? This the hour has gone so quickly. It's been wonderful.
Wow. Well, I suppose it's for anybody who's listening who has had, or is anxious about public speaking, or that I really believe, if it can change for me, and I'm sure, like yourself, Steve, if it can change for yourself, everybody's got that potential to be able to stand up and feel comfortable and speak really from, their authentic self or whatever they want to express. When they can really see that, it's just their thinking that's getting in the way, that they're really believing that thinking to be true about them. And that's really been my journey, is that I've suddenly seen that it's not true. And then it's amazing what you find behind all that. You surprise yourself. So yeah, after 30 years, it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. That's what I'd like to say.
Perfect. Yeah, I totally agree with that. We often think that it's possible for someone else, but not me.
Yeah.
And someone might be watching that and thinking that as well. But I just want to say that, Donna and I both experienced that thought of it's not possible for us, and then we still did it. And we're both grateful for that. We never thought it'd ever be possible. So it definitely is for you as well. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Donna. It's been really lovely.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Really, really. Thank you for asking.
My pleasure. Just before we end, guys, from the 1st to the 4th of July, there's a group of authors who have written books in this understanding, and they've kindly set up a discount for their books, and also there's quite a few free ones on there. So if you want to check that out, the website is thoughtrevolution.me, and I think there's about 10 or so books on there. So even if you haven't got a Kindle, you can still download them onto your phone or onto your PC or Mac. And I'd encourage you to look at those and just read with an open mind, because you get to hear from different people who are all sharing this same understanding, and I'm confident that you'll see something for yourself. It might not happen straight away, but Dora and I have seen something in different books that we've read. So yeah, go and check that out. From 8 a.m. UK time tomorrow, and those books will be available to download for free, and also some of those discounted. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you again soon. Thank you again, Donna.
Thank you, Steve. That's lovely. Thanks.